So Victor is going to talk to us about winning the attention battle with XR storytelling. Come on up here, Victor. I'm really excited about this because, we're in the enterprise track, and it's, some people kind of forget the fact that, people working in enterprises are people. And so if you can bring them, stories and help people, is really what it's all about. Not just jamming an AR layer in front of them and showing them some data, but maybe walking them through this. So I'm very excited. Please put your hands together. Welcome, Victor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm super glad to be here again this year at AWE. Very briefly, so my name is Victor Agulhon. I'm the co-founder of Targo. Targo, we're a virtual reality documentary studio. The reason I got into this technology almost 5 years ago now is because I'm very convinced from the very beginning that this is the next iteration of computing and interface with technology, the one that comes after mobile. So to work in that tech and to work into democratizing this tech, I created Targo. Targo, we're an Emmy-nominated VR studio. We create documentaries that we distribute online to consumers directly, to people who own VR headset, and offline also in VR cinemas, museums, cultural institutions, places where people don't necessarily have a VR headset. Before we dive into the topic, I want to just take a step back and just do an analogy on content and why I want to talk about the kind of content that attracts consumers and viewers' interest. I just want to take an example on viral content. The thing is, viral content exists for more than 20 years now. It existed before mobile. This is an email chain, one of the first one that was very viral. It was written by Jonah Peretti. He's the guy who founded BuzzFeed. And this viral email chain with Nike, where he was trying to make a custom shoes, went viral. And when he saw the phenomenon of virality, he decided to create BuzzFeed. The reason is viral content was only made possible because mobile appeared and because we were connected all the time, we had access to short-form content, and we were able to interact much more often. So it makes sense in some way that mobile enabled the domination of viral content. And today, when we look at our phones on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, and any kind of socials, we understand what content is viral, and it's a specific category of content, not only a way to distribute content. And so now when we apply this to immersive content, when we go to the world of XR, the question that we ask ourselves is immersive content new? And this is a picture I found of Paris, which is my hometown, where you can see this is in 1911, and people in 1911 were already starting to make immersive content. They were already trying to immerse people in a different kind of reality. And so immersive content is not something new. It's just something that is going to be enabled by virtual reality, by augmented reality, because this medium, it removes the limits. It allows you to create an immediate depth and connection with the topics you're talking about. So now today, it seems pretty obvious. It seems almost natural that we're going to consume immersive content with all these XR devices. The question is, how do we engage with the people who have XR devices and why it matters? The reason it matters, I think, is because right now we've been for the past 3-4 years in a stage of an industry that's been pretty much plateauing. When you look at what's about to happen, we know the remote Apple headset, the Quest 3 that's coming up soon, the Google headset with Samsung that's also meant to come out. There is going to be more and more people that are going to be drawn to this technology. And the lessons that we've learned across the past years are going to help us to frame how we can speak to people, what interests people in this VR and XR world. So the question is, how do we find the kind of content that's very native to XR, the kind of content that people relate to? And that's the topic I want to talk about today. I think the starting point is really understanding that today there is an arbitrage in XR. When you look at people, and I think we've all done it, when you look at the kind of content that's available today on the store, when you go on all the headsets, there's kind of a big divide. There's a big divide between the sort of like very artistic kind of experiences that will target mostly artist audiences, and on the other side you have very gaming or oriented experiences. There is not so much of mainstream experiences, the one that we'll watch on Netflix, the one that we'll watch on Disney+, and that's kind of like what's missing, and that's where I think there is a lot of opportunities today for all creators, brands, media companies to really speak to you and I, to the people who have VR headset at home. I think there are 3 points that I want to make today about how we can create, and how we attract attention in the virtual reality space. I think the first one is the relevance. What I notice every time I put on my VR headset, and I guess it's the same for a lot of people, when you put on the VR headset, it feels like you're entering into a different world. And by different world, I don't mean the one that you're immersed in. It's one that doesn't feel really connected to what you're seeing in the real world. So there's no news, there's nothing, and you don't feel like you're connected to the now, to what's happening. And so it's not a tech problem, it's a content problem, is that people don't feel like there is a connection between our experience in the physical world and the one in the virtual world. And so I just want to take a few examples of productions we've worked on that really address these problems and the result that they yielded. The first one is the documentary that we did, which was called Surviving 9/11. It's a documentary about the story of someone who survived the attacks, obviously, and we wanted to seize the opportunity of the 20th commemoration to find a way to say something new about the commemoration and about the testimony of the people who survived. So the goal is really to share the story of a survivor. It's a 20-minute documentary which is adapted from a book of a woman called Janelle Guzman Macmillan. She was inside the towers when they collapsed. The starting point of the reflection for us, and which I think should be the starting point for everyone who wants to engage with VR content creation to speak to audiences, is why does it matter now? And then it was very obvious for this topic to be relevant at the time we did it, but the reason is that at the moment of the 20th commemoration, when you turn on the TV, when you go on social, this is what people are going to be talking about. And this was important to us because we wanted to be part of that conversation. We wanted to be part of this cultural moment that was the 20th commemoration. And so we did that documentary, and then obviously talking just about a moment and just trying to fit content into a time frame is not really how you create a new kind of experience and how you engage people. We thought that it was the right opportunity, and then we started to think about what kind of technology we could do to provide viewers and audiences with something that would be engaging. What we did is we went and we searched for archive pictures that were never seen before, panoramic pictures, virtually the same thing as what I showed you, for Paris in 1910. And here, these were panoramic pictures of New York, of the Twin Towers, before the attacks, and we allowed people to go back in time and to explore New York and the American dream that it was at the time as it was then. So we did some work, obviously, and when you stitch together all these pictures, in the end, when you're watching in the headset, you do have the sensation that you're back there and you connect more with the story of Janelle, this young immigrant arriving in New York and living the American dream up to the attacks. So this is really the starting points. For us, culturally relevant events are really the starting point of so many content. And for us, that meant being able to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the attacks in VR. But that's the kind of things we should think about. In terms of results, and I think that's the most interesting one, is when you release something at the right time and that gets the conversation started. Today we have more than 2.5 million views on this documentary only, which is approximately 200,000 hours of content watched. And I think the biggest driver was the fact that we released it at this time and it allowed people to connect with it. So really the first starting point of how do you engage with audiences is just making sure that what they see in the real world is actually going to be what they're going to be seeing in VR, in XR, and today it's not happening enough. And so I think it's our responsibility as people who are interested in this technology to create it and to make it happen. So that's the first point, relevance. The second one is trying to think native. I like this footage of the Lumière brothers because today when we think of the Lumière brothers, the people who invented the cinema, we think of them as filmmakers. The reality is their job were engineers, and at the time everyone was seeing them mostly as engineers, as developers, as entrepreneurs. And today we look back at them and thinking of them as filmmakers. And I think that's a bit the situation in which we are now, which is why it's interesting to get involved in this technology. I want to take another example of what that means to think native and to engage with audiences and topics that are relevant. We tried to find topics that are evergreen. So we started thinking about what could you do around food, right? So we started to think about food is probably one of the most consumed kind of show that you're going to have on Netflix and all the streaming platforms. Probably one of the most popular hashtags on Instagram and on Twitter. And we wanted to know what could we do with this topic, knowing that it is relevant to people because people look at food on their digital landscape. What can we do with VR to make something new? And so here, Our approach was creating a documentary, same, 3 episode, a series that's available on MetaQuest about 3 female chefs around the world. So what we did is very simple. In some way, it's a world tour of cultures, and basically you dive into 3 different types of cuisines, and you discover the backstage of what it means to be a chef. So we took 1 chef from the US, 1 from Japan, 1 from France, and we literally took a dive inside that dish. And that's what was interesting is, as the Lumiere brothers, they kind of like took all the technology that was available to package it into a new form. That's what we did here. What we wanted to do was to be able to film the food in a way that was not possible before. So instead of having us, looking at food as we do on, on screens and like as small dishes, we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to change their perspective literally, and to actually feel like instead of looking at a dish, you're looking at something that's like a massive sculpture, 3, 4, 5 meters wide, and that you can dig inside of it. And so we created a dedicated camera. We created something that would allow people to see something new. And that's the second thing that you have to do with VR, in my opinion. If you want to provide users with something that's going to mark them, that's something that's going to be engaging to them, you have to create this kind of technology. You have to go further than what's established and off the shelves today. So with that camera, we're able to create very, very detailed like shots in 3D, in close-up of all these, this delicious food that the chefs were cooking. This is an example from the French episode. This is an example also from the sushi master that we filmed in Japan. And the core and the most important element here is really being able to offer someone a point of view that they've never had before. So once you have the relevance, once you have the new point of view, you're able to offer the kind of visuals that people really want to see. The reason why it's important at this point is because if we do and we copy paste what we do in other medium, then we're never going to be able to engage really strongly with viewers in XR. And so the results of this one approach, I think thinking native, it's always going to lead to the creation of a new technology. Today we have this camera rig that's extremely detailed that allows us to create like 3D imagery of close-up. And the second thing is that now for us, we have 2 activities, of course, production of documentaries, but we also work with companies. And right now we're working with amusement parks and luxury brands that each want to use this camera, this technology that they discovered online watching VR to showcase their own products. So we're working with perfumes, we're working with amusement parks that want to showcase the goodies and the food that they're offering at the park. So there's really clear return on investment on all of these approaches, because every time you're kind of like digging into something that had never been done before. And the last point, and it's probably one that's going to be evolving more and more, it's adapting to users. So here, the point is that there's actually, when you look at the way we use mobile and the way we use VR, they're radically different. So being able to create content that's going to translate from one to the other is going to be very difficult. When we're talking to mobile, obviously we check our phones approximately 140 times a day, and the sessions last in average 2 minutes. When you do VR, the available data today shows that we're using VR 30 minutes, the people who use VR, approximately 30 minutes per session and twice a week. And so it's a very different kind of time that you're going to be allocating to VR, and it's also one in which you have to understand that viewers, when they go into VR today, and that's going to evolve hopefully, but there still is a lot of friction. So the way people consume content is not going to be the same one as when we scroll down on Twitter. We want to be exposed to like high quality content, one that's going to be probably more expensive to make, but one that's going to be also much more rewarding for the user. So adapting to users means crafting content that's going to be relevant, that's going to be native, but that's also going to be fitting their journey. And so for this one, we're trying to not only speak to the people that have VR headset, but trying to also reach people that don't have VR headset. And I want to take the example of a documentary we're working on right now, which is on the Kennedy assassination. We're working with the Sixth Floor Museum in Dallas. It's the reference institution on the Kennedy assassination and its legacy. And they have all the collection of archives, basically, of the assassination, and we're working with it to create a new experience. The goal is every year they have 500,000 people coming to their doors to learn about the Kennedy assassination and the history. And we thought that obviously it ticked all the boxes for us to be distributing a documentary like this online. it's relevant. We can do new stuff with the archive. But we also thought that there was something very interesting about having a location where people could come. And so obviously this is the case applied to a museum, but if you're a brand or if you're a media company, you can also think about having people coming to stores, to shops, and there's so many sites that you could leverage. And so here we're following what people do. People who are interested in the Kennedy assassination are going to this museum. And so what we're doing is we're working with this museum very closely to kind of like take all their archives and bring them into VR. So here this is a small sample of how we're reprojecting the archive into space. So when you're watching the experience inside the headset, you actually see the archive being reprojected in 3D in front of you. It gives you a better understanding. And the second reason why it's interesting, it's even the people who know everything about the Kennedy assassination, the people who've been to the museum, the people who know basically everything you could know on this topic, they still find it amazing because they're able to do stuff they can't do otherwise. They can see the archive taking life in front of them. And so here, what's interesting is you take elements that people know, and you're transforming it into something they didn't think they could see, try, or experience. So that was really the core realization around this project. And finally, and I think that's the most interesting part in this project, we are taking this experience and we're making it accessible in the museum. So when you will go there on site, there will be two experiences. Either you can go and try the physical exhibition, you can try and visit the actual museum, or you can go into the pods that we're going to be installing there and that are going to be available for people to experience the investigation and the history of the events in a different way. What we are targeting right now, and this is like very realistic plans, is we are targeting for 100,000 people every year to be exposed to VR with this technique. And this is also for us a major step ahead to be able to bring an American institution like this into a metaverse, approach for the next year. So the reason it matters is, why it matters is, I think today what we're doing as storytellers is really about this, is really about finding the way that we can craft, a message into a bottle. Very simply, it's about, adapting a story, something that we want to say, and making sure that it's going to fit the medium that we are applying it to. Online, I think the goal is really to be able to create that cultural relevance to people, create experiences that people don't have in any other medium, and finally, sticking really to what users do, what users watch, and that's, I think, the three tenets we live by, at least at Targo, trying to make sure that we can engage audiences through these three medium. So that's it for me today. Thank you very much for your time, and maybe we have some time for questions.
I find with 360-degree content, it's hard to navigate the user's attention to the relevant material. How do you navigate that problem?
Can you repeat the first part?
In 360-degree experiences, how do you navigate the user's attention to the relevant material?
Yeah. So for us, it's pretty straightforward. In every story, there's always something you have to focus on. And there is always a point of interest, and we do the edit in that way. So we're able to really pinpoint every time in every action what we want the user to look at. And we basically create a path during the edit from like one point to the other. So the point is not that users, because it's 360 or VR, it's not that because we're adding that tech, users have to look at everywhere all the time. It's more that they have to look at this one thing, but they have to feel like they're sharing the space with it. So even though there is like the temptation of adding graphics to all the side and to always enrich, we try to keep it very simple and do like one frame, one action in some way. Is there any other question?
The example with the Kennedy assassination, you used the 2D film, but then you placed it into a 3D recreation of the scene. So that's great. I can't wait to try that. But have you noticed any other things that work when you're using 2D source material in a 3D space about the distance to the user or the different planes working at the same time? Have you seen anything else that works across a wide audience?
I think it's always a matter of, I mean, there's no one way, to apply to all the different, media that we're gonna be using. What we found with 2D is there's always a treatment that makes it possible to make it more relevant in VR. So for the Kennedy assassination, it's, we are recreating basically the 3D shapes that are inside the picture, and we are putting it at the exact place where they were taken, so you have a perfect overlay on the scene. In the project, in previous projects, we've been able to do some 3D conversion also on classic footage to bring them into depth. And then for the Kennedy project, we also did another thing where we extracted people from each frame as paper cuts, and we used it to recreate all the crowds that are at any given point at any given area. So we don't see 2D as a constraining medium to use in VR. You just have to think about how you expand the frame, or how do you close the frame. But it's really, it's all about transforming the media.
When you do put a 2D source material in a 3D space, is there something about the distance to the person that makes a difference? I mean, do you think about how far away or how large the screen is?
Yeah, so it's never really a screen. We always try to expand it into an actual scene. So it's never a person looking, someone looking at a TV or something like this. It always takes space, and then we think about it the same way we would in the real world. Is how close to the action would you be? Would you feel confident and comfortable being? And it's always about that kind of do you belong in that space or not? And that's how we're going to position you. But we always, when we took a 2D frame, we always decompose it into a 3D scene. So your view is never blocked. It's always, kind of it's always opening. And, a good rule that we apply is we never want something in the user's immediate surroundings, because we don't want, the sort of the private shell around the user. We never want to put something, even though it's just, a story. We never want to put anything in that area.
Interesting. Thank you.
And we may have time for one last question.
Hello. It was interesting at the beginning when you're talking about relevance. You showed a big group of people. It was kind of gave the idea of for everybody. But when you talked about some of the specific examples, like the 9/11 memorial or the Kennedy thing, these are more for niche audiences. When you think about creating relevance for everybody versus niche audiences, or niche may not be the right word, but kind of what goes into the thought process of choosing the audience for the story?
Well, I mean, I think regarding the significance of 9/11 attacks or the JFK assassination, I do think that there are topics that are widely known by everyone and that are significant, and I don't think that they're niche in a way. I think today when you're looking at, in content in general, I do think that these are very mainstream topics because everyone know about them. Everyone's seen a documentary, seen, news around it. So I think it's part of a very culturally shared knowledge. So in that sense, for me, it's mainstream and it's a way to talk to everyone. And then obviously, there's going to be individual preference into such or such topic. But I think that these historical events have a very, very wide significance to all audiences in the US and around the world. And so and just about the process that goes into it, we try to really stick to these kind of moments. Anniversaries are interesting because as an indie studio, we also have to find ways to get the attention and make sure that people will see what we do, not because we want the attention, but because we think that we are bringing an interesting part to the conversation. And so these anniversaries are usually very interesting moments to be able to get traction in the news and have people realizing that now VR can also be a good way to talk about historical events. Good. Thank you very much.